The massive alien ships appeared at the edge of the solar system like dark clouds blocking out the stars. Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship, his scaled hands gripping the metal railing as he stared at the blue planet ahead. Earth looked exactly as he remembered from the old records, but something felt different. "Sir, we're detecting strange energy readings from the planet," reported his second officer Zixtel. The young Zephyrian's voice carried a note of confusion. That made Kethver's stomach tighten. "What kind of energy readings?" Kethver asked, his deep voice echoing through the bridge. "Unknown type, sir. Very powerful. Much stronger than anything in our databases." Kethver frowned. The last time his people had visited Earth was 500,000 years ago. Back then, the primitive humans had barely learned to use fire. Properly, they lived in caves, hunted with stone tools, and died before they reached 30 years old. The Zephyrians had studied them for a few decades, decided they were worthless, and left them alone. "Probably just natural electromagnetic fields," Kethver said, trying to sound confident. These primitive worlds often have unusual energy patterns, but deep down something worried him. The energy readings were too organized, too structured, to be natural. They looked almost like the patterns his own ships produced, but far more complex. "Sir," another officer called out from across the bridge, "we have incoming vessels." Kethver spun around to look at the main screen. 3 sleek ships were approaching from the direction of Mars at incredible speed. They moved so fast that Kethver had to blink to make sure he was seeing correctly. "How fast are they moving?" he demanded. "Impossible to calculate, sir. Our computers can't track them properly. They're using some kind of propulsion system we don't recognize." The alien admiral felt his heart begin to race. No primitive species should have space travel, let alone ships that could outrun Zephyrian scanners. Something was very wrong. The approaching ships slowed down as they came closer, and Kethver could see them clearly now. They were beautiful in a way that made his breath catch. The hulls were smooth and white, with gentle curves that seemed to flow like water. Blue lights pulsed along their sides in patterns that looked almost alive. "They're trying to communicate with us," Zixtel reported. "They're using our own language." "Our language?" Kethver's voice cracked slightly. "How could they possibly know our language?" Before anyone could answer, a clear voice filled the bridge. The speaker was obviously human, but the words came out in perfect Zephyrian, with proper grammar and even the correct formal tones used when addressing a superior officer. "Welcome back to our solar system, Admiral Kethver. This is Captain Ryan Torres of the Earth Defense Force. We've been expecting you." The bridge fell silent. Every Zephyrian officer stared at the screen in shock. The human not only knew their language, but also knew Kethver's name and rank. How was that possible? How do you know who I am?" Kethver managed to say, "We have excellent records, Admiral. Your people visited us before, and we remember everything. We'd like to invite you to follow us to a safe parking area beyond our moon. We have much to discuss." Kethver's mind raced. The human spoke as if he was the one in charge, as if the Zephyrians were guests who needed permission to approach their own former study subjects. It was backwards, impossible, and deeply unsettling. "Sir, should we follow them?" Zixtel asked quietly. Before Kethver could answer, more ships appeared on the screen. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They emerged from behind planets, from asteroid fields, from places where the Zephyrian scanners had detected nothing. Within minutes, the alien fleet was completely surrounded, but the human ships didn't attack. They simply waited, their blue lights pulsing in a pattern that almost looked like a greeting. Captain Torres' voice came through the communications again, still perfectly polite. "We understand this might be confusing for you, Admiral. We're not the same species you left behind. We've grown quite a bit since then. Please follow us. We have prepared a comfortable area where our leaders can meet with yours." Kethver looked around his bridge at the shocked faces of his crew. In all their years of space travel, they had never encountered a situation like this. They were supposed to be the advanced ones, the ones in control. But somehow these humans had turned everything upside down. "How many ships do they have?" he asked his scanner operator. I'm not sure, sir. Every time I think I have a count, more appear. They seem to be everywhere in this system. Through the main viewing port, Kethver could see structures that hadn't been there before. Massive space stations orbited Earth, their lights twinkling like stars. The moon itself looked different, covered with what appeared to be cities and industrial facilities. My God, whispered Zixtel. What have they done to this system? Mars, which had been a dead red planet in their records, now showed signs of atmosphere and what looked like oceans. The asteroid belt, which should have been full of rocks, was nearly empty except for huge mining platforms and processing stations. Admiral, Captain Torres said again, we're sending you navigation coordinates. Please follow the designated path. We want to make sure you don't accidentally run into any of our traffic. Traffic? The word hit Kethver like a physical blow. This wasn't supposed to be a busy system. It was supposed to be one primitive planet with barely intelligent life forms. Instead, he was looking at a civilization that had spread across their entire solar system and apparently treated interplanetary travel as routine. Follow them, he ordered quietly. But keep our weapons ready. Sir, our weapons are ready, but ... The weapons officer hesitated. But what? Sir, I'm not sure our weapons would be effective against their ships. The energy shields they're using are far more advanced than anything we've seen before. As the Zephyrian fleet followed the human escorts deeper into the solar system, Kethver began to realize that this wasn't going to be the simple return mission he had planned. The humans weren't going to welcome them as returning gods or beg for their advanced technology. Instead, it was beginning to look like the Zephyrians were the primitive ones now, and that thought terrified him more than any enemy he had ever faced in battle. The blue planet grew larger ahead of them, but it was no longer the Earth he remembered. This was something entirely new, something that shouldn't have been possible, and he was about to find out just how much everything had changed. The meeting room was nothing like what Admiral Kethver had expected. Instead of a primitive cave or simple wooden structure, he found himself in a crystal chamber that seemed to float in space itself. The walls were transparent, showing the vastness of space around them, with Earth hanging like a jewel in the distance. Dr. Marcus Webb sat across from him at a table that appeared to be made of solid light. The human looked ordinary enough, with gray hair and kind eyes, but there was something in his expression that made Kethver uncomfortable. It was the look of someone who knew far more than they were letting on. Thank you for coming, Admiral, Dr. Webb said in perfect Zephyrian. I'm Dr. Marcus Webb, and I specialize in the history of your people's visits to our world. Kethver's throat felt dry. History? What do you mean by history? Dr. Webb smiled and waved his hand. The air above? The table shimmered, and suddenly three-dimensional images appeared floating between them. Kethver gasped as he recognized the images. They were scenes from the Zephyrian visits to Earth, but seen from the human perspective. We remember everything, Dr. Webb said calmly. Your people came to Earth 500,000 years ago. You studied us, took samples, left behind some equipment, and then decided we weren't worth your time. The images showed ancient humans hiding in caves, watching the Zephyrian ships with wide, frightened eyes. But other images showed something else. Humans creeping out after the aliens left, examining the abandoned technology, learning from it. You thought we were too primitive to understand what you left behind, Dr. Webb continued. But you were. Wrong, we learned, we adapted, we grew. Kethver stared at the images in horror. That's impossible. Your people had barely discovered fire. You couldn't have understood our technology. We didn't understand it at first, Dr. Webb admitted. It took us thousands of years to figure out how your computers worked. Tens of thousands of years to understand your power sources. But we never stopped trying. Generation after generation, we passed down the knowledge and kept learning. More images appeared. Humans throughout history working with strange devices, building primitive copies of Zephyrian technology, slowly improving and advancing. The timeline moved faster and faster, showing the growth of human civilization from caves to cities to space travel. Your people gave us the foundation, Dr. Webb said. Everything we built started with what you left behind. In a way, we owe you a debt of gratitude. Kethver felt sick. But it's only been 500,000 years. That's not enough time for a species to advance so far. It is if that species never stops learning, Dr. Webb replied. While your people were fighting the same wars and using the same technology, for millennia, we were constantly changing, constantly improving. Every generation built on what the previous one had learned. The human stood up and walked to the transparent wall, looking out at the stars. Would you like to see what we've accomplished? Before Kethver could answer, the view outside changed. Instead of empty space, he could see vast cities floating in the void, connected by streams of light. Massive ships moved between them, carrying goods and people. The scene was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. We have colonies in 12 star systems now, Dr. Webb said casually. Over 2 billion humans live in space, with more born every day. We've terraformed 6 planets and are working on 12 more. 12 star systems? Kethver whispered. But your people couldn't even leave your planet when we last visited. That was then, this is now. Dr. Webb turned back to face him. We've learned to do things your people never imagined. Watch. The human pulled a small device from his pocket, no bigger than his thumb. He pressed a button and suddenly the device expanded, unfolding into a complex machine with spinning parts and glowing crystals. This is a basic computational matrix, Dr. Webb explained. It has more processing power than your flagship's main computer. Every human child carries one as a toy. Kethver stared at the device in shock. His ship's computer filled an entire room and required a full crew to operate. This tiny human toy was more advanced than anything in the Zephyrian fleet. How? He managed to ask. We learned from your people, then we improved on what we learned. We've been doing that for 500,000 years. We've had time to perfect things. The door to the chamber opened and a young human woman entered. She was introduced as Engineer Sophie Kim, and she carried a case filled with more devices that Kethver didn't recognize. Admiral, she said in fluent Zephyrian, Dr. Webb asked me to show you some of our current technology. I thought you might be interested in seeing how we've improved on your original designs. She opened the case and pulled out what looked like a simple metal rod. This is based on a power cell your people left behind. We've been working on it for about 50,000 years now. Sophie touched the rod to the wall, and instantly a section of the crystal became opaque, then transparent, then began showing complex mathematical equations. Your original power cell could run a small device for about 10 years, she explained. This one can power a city for 1,000 years, and it's completely recyclable. We've also made it about 1,000,000 times smaller than your original design. Kethver's hearts were racing. Everything these humans were showing him was impossible. His people were supposed to be the advanced ones, the ones with superior technology. But these humans had taken Zephyrian science and made it look like primitive cave paintings. Why are you showing me this? He asked. Dr. Webb and Sophie exchanged glances. Because we want you to understand the situation, Dr. Webb said gently. When your people left Earth, you thought you were abandoning a worthless species? But you actually gave us the greatest gift possible. You gave us knowledge and the motivation to use it. We know about your empire, Sophie added. We've been monitoring your communications for the past 1,000 years. We know about the wars, the resource shortages, the population decline. We know your people are struggling. Kethver felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. The humans had been watching them for 1,000 years? How was that possible? We have ships in your territory, Dr. Webb continued. We've been observing, learning about your culture, your technology, your problems. We know more about your people than you might think. You've been spying on us? Kethver's voice was barely a whisper. We've been preparing, Sophie corrected. We knew you'd come back eventually. Your people always return to check on their old study subjects. We've been waiting for this moment for centuries. The Admiral looked around the crystal chamber, at the impossible technology, at the humans who spoke his language perfectly and knew his people's history better than he did. What do you want from us? Dr. Webb smiled, but it wasn't a cruel smile. It was almost sad. "We want to help you," he said. "Your people gave us the foundation for everything we've become. Now we'd like to return the favor. But first," Sophie added, "you need to understand that the relationship between our species has changed. You're not the advanced ones anymore. We are, and that means we need to discuss what happens next very carefully." Kethver sank back into his chair, overwhelmed by the weight of what he was learning. His people had come to Earth expecting to find primitive humans ready to serve them. Instead, they'd found their former subjects had become their superiors in every way that mattered. The humans weren't angry about the past. They weren't seeking revenge. But they were clearly, unmistakably in charge now, and Kethver had no idea what that meant for the future of his people. Commander Zraken slammed his fist on the table so hard that the metal dented. His yellow eyes blazed with fury as he stared at the human delegation across from him. Unlike Admiral Kethver, who had begun to accept the shocking reality of human advancement, Zraken refused to believe what he was seeing. "This is ridiculous," he roared in his native language. "We are the Zephyrian Empire. We have conquered 100 worlds. We will not be lectured by primitive mammals." President Elena Rodriguez sat calmly in her chair, her hands folded in her lap. She understood every word Zraken had said, thanks to the translation device in her ear, but she didn't react to his anger. Beside her, General Carl Thompson watched, the alien commander with the patient look of someone who had seen this type of behavior many times before. "Commander Zraken," President Rodriguez said in perfect Zephyrian, "please sit down. We're here to talk, not to fight." "Talk?" Zraken's voice was full of scorn. "You expect us to talk to you as equals? You were nothing when we left. You lived in caves and ate raw meat." "That was a long time ago," the president replied calmly. "Things change. We've changed." Zraken turned to Admiral Kethver, who was sitting quietly at the other end of the table. "Admiral, surely you don't believe this nonsense? These humans are trying to trick us with illusions and lies." Kethver looked tired and defeated. "I've seen their technologies, Zraken. I've seen their cities, their ships, their weapons. It's all real, impossible." Zraken stood up again, his tail lashing behind him. "We are the superior species. We have always been the superior species. I demand that these humans submit to our authority immediately." General Thompson leaned forward. "Slightly, and if we refuse, then we will take what we want by force," Zraken declared. "We have a fleet of warships in orbit. We can destroy every human city on this planet." President Rodriguez exchanged a glance with General Thompson. "Commander, I think you misunderstand the situation. We're not refusing to talk because we're afraid of your weapons. We're talking because we want to avoid unnecessary conflict. You're afraid." Zraken pointed an accusing finger at her. "You know you cannot stand against the might of the Zephyrian Empire. Would you like us to demonstrate why we're not afraid?" General Thompson asked quietly. Before President Rodriguez could stop him, Zraken leaped at the chance. "Yes. Show us what your primitive weapons can do against our superior technology," the president sighed. "Very well, General. Please arrange a small demonstration." General Thompson pressed a button on his wrist communicator. "Captain Alex Johnson, please prepare a Level 1 demonstration for our guests." "Level 1, sir?" came the voice through the communicator. "Are you sure that's enough? Start with Level 1. We can escalate if necessary." Through the massive window of the space station conference room, they could see the Zephyrian fleet hanging in space like a collection of dark stones. Zraken pointed at them proudly. 50 ships, he boasted, each one capable of destroying a continent. That is the power of the Zephyrian Empire. "They're very impressive," President Rodriguez agreed, politely. Suddenly, the space around the Zephyrian fleet began to shimmer. What had appeared to be empty space revealed itself to be filled with human ships. They materialized one by one like ghosts becoming solid. Within moments, there were hundreds of them, sleek and silver, surrounding the alien fleet completely. Zraken's mouth fell open. Where did they come from? "They were always there," General Thompson explained. "We've been using advanced stealth Technology. Your sensors can't detect our ships when we don't want them to. That's impossible, Zraken whispered, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. Captain Johnson, General Thompson spoke into his communicator, please show our guests what our ships can do. The human ships began to move in perfect formation, like a school of fish swimming through space. They performed maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of physics, turning at impossible angles, accelerating and stopping instantly, moving in patterns that made Zraken's eyes hurt to follow. How fast are they moving? Admiral Kethver asked weakly. About half the speed of light, General Thompson replied casually. We could go faster, but we don't want to damage your ships with the gravitational effects. One of the human ships approached. A small asteroid near the fleet. A beam of light shot out from the ship, and the asteroid simply vanished. Not exploded, not broken apart, but completely gone as if it had never existed. What did you do to it? Zraken demanded. We converted it into energy, General Thompson explained. The matter was transformed at the molecular level. It's now part of the cosmic background radiation. You can destroy matter itself? Kethver's voice was barely audible. We can do a lot of things, President Rodriguez said. We can also create matter from energy, manipulate gravity, travel faster than light, and alter the flow of time in small areas. We've had 500,000 years to figure out how the universe works. Zraken was staring at the human ships with growing horror. But your technology is impossible. It violates the basic laws of physics. It violates the laws of physics as you understand them, General Thompson corrected. We've discovered that the universe is far more flexible than most species. Realize, when you have enough time and enough motivation, you can learn to bend the rules. Commander Zraken, President Rodriguez said gently, I want you to understand something. We're not showing you this to frighten you. We're showing you this because we want you to make an informed decision about what happens next. What do? You mean? Zraken asked, though he seemed to already know the answer. We're offering your people a choice, the President explained. You can join us as partners in a new alliance. We'll share our technology, help you solve your problems, and work together to explore the galaxy. Or you can continue to view us as enemies and face the consequences of that choice. You're threatening us, Zraken said, but his voice lacked conviction. No, General Thompson replied firmly. We're stating facts. Your empire is dying. Your population is declining, your resources are running out, and your technology is thousands of years behind ours. You came here expecting to find primitive humans who would serve you. Instead, you found humans who could help you survive. Admiral Kethver was nodding slowly. He's right, Zraken. We've seen the reports. Our colonies are failing. Our people are losing hope. These humans are offering us a chance to rebuild, but they're our former subjects. Zraken protested. It's humiliating. It's survival, Kethver replied quietly. And sometimes survival requires swallowing your pride. President Rodriguez stood up from her chair. We don't need your answer right now. Take some time to think about it. Discuss it with your people. But remember, we're not the same species you left behind. We've grown up, and grown-up species don't have time for games about who's superior and who's inferior. She walked to the window and looked out at the massive fleets facing each other in space. We all share the same galaxy. We can either work together to make it a better place, or we can fight over the scraps of what's left. The choice is yours. Zraken looked at his admiral, then at the human ships outside, then back at the president. For the first time since arriving at Earth, he seemed to truly understand what they were dealing with. The humans weren't just more advanced than the Zephyrians. They were so far ahead that the comparison was meaningless. It was like comparing a stone axe to a nuclear weapon, and they were being offered a chance to join the side with the nuclear weapons. What exactly are you proposing? Zraken asked, his voice much quieter than before. President Rodriguez smiled. Now we're getting somewhere. Dr. Christine Lee stood in front of a massive holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Tiny lights marked different star systems. with blue lights representing human colonies and red lights showing Zephyrian territory. The contrast was striking. Blue lights were scattered throughout their section of the galaxy, while red lights were clustered in a shrinking area that looked smaller every day. "This is the reality of your empire," she told the assembled Zephyrian delegation. Elder Vethmara, the oldest Zephyrian in the group, stared at the display with ancient eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. "How long have you been watching us?" Elder Vethmara asked in a voice that creaked like old wood. "About 1,000 years," Dr. Lee replied honestly. "We sent our first scout ships to your territory when we developed faster-than-light travel. We've been observing your people ever since." Commander Zraken, who had been unusually quiet since the demonstration of human power, finally spoke up. "You've been spying on us for 1,000 years and we never detected you." "Our stealth technology is quite advanced," Dr. Lee said simply. "We learned a lot from studying your sensor systems. We know exactly how to avoid detection." "Ambassador." Kevin Wright stepped forward, his diplomatic training evident in his calm demeanor. "We want to be clear about something. We weren't spying to find weaknesses or plan an invasion. We were studying your culture because we wanted to understand you better." "Why?" Elder Vethmara asked. "Why would you care about understanding us?" "Because you're our teachers," Dr. Lee explained. "Everything we've accomplished started with what your people left behind on Earth. We felt we owed you that much respect." She waved her hand, and the holographic display changed to show detailed information about Zephyrian society. Population, numbers, resource reports, military strength, technological development. The data painted a picture of a civilization in serious decline. "Your population has decreased by 60% in the last 10,000 years, Dr. Lee continued. "Your birth rates are falling, your colonies are being abandoned, and your military is losing territory to younger species every decade." "Admiral." Kethver looked at the numbers with growing despair. "You know more about our problems than our own government does." "We've been trying to understand why your people stopped advancing," Dr. Lee said. "We found the answer in your history." The display changed again, showing the development of Zephyrian civilization over millions of years. For a long time, the line showed steady progress. Then, about 50,000 years ago, the line flattened out and began to decline. "Your people achieved great things," Dr. Lee explained. "You built an empire, conquered many worlds, developed impressive technology. But then you stopped growing. You became satisfied with what you had." "There's nothing wrong with being satisfied," Zraken said defensively. "There is if the universe around you keeps changing," Captain Alex Johnson interjected as he joined the group. "While your people were fighting the same territorial wars with the same weapons, other species were developing new technologies and new strategies." Elder Vethmara nodded slowly. "The young races have been pushing us back for centuries. We assumed it was just a temporary setback." "It's not temporary," Dr. Lee said gently. "It's a fundamental problem with how your society works. Your people have become conservative, afraid of change. You use the same methods your ancestors used millions of years ago." "But those methods worked," Zraken protested. "They worked then," Ambassador Wright replied. "They don't work now. The galaxy has changed. New species have emerged with new ideas and new technologies. Species that aren't afraid to try new things." Dr. Lee brought up another display showing human development over the same time period. Unlike the Zephyrian line, which had flattened out, the human line showed constant acceleration, growing steeper and steeper over time. "This is what happens when a species never stops learning," she explained. "Every generation of humans has built on what the previous generation discovered. We never became satisfied with what we had. We always wanted to know more, do more, be more." But you're so young," Elder Vethmara said. "How could you advance so quickly?" "Because we had to," Captain Johnson replied. "We knew there were other species out there. We knew we were behind. We knew that if we didn't catch up, we might not survive." "Your people gave us the motivation to keep growing," Dr. Lee added. "Every time we found a piece of Zephyrian technology, every time we decoded another part of your language, Every time we learned something new about your culture, we realized how much more there was to discover. Ambassador Wright stepped closer to the Zephyrian delegation. We want to make you an offer. Not as conquerors to the conquered, but as students to their teachers. What kind of offer? Admiral Kethver asked cautiously. Join us, Ambassador Wright said simply. Become part of our alliance. We'll share our technology with you, help you rebuild your colonies, assist with your population problems. In exchange, you share your knowledge and experience with us. You want us to serve you, Zurikan said bitterly. No, Dr. Lee replied. Firmly, we want you to grow with us. Your people have wisdom that comes from millions of years of experience. We have energy and new ideas. Together we could accomplish things that neither of us could do alone. Elder Vethmara was quiet for a long moment, studying the holographic displays. What would this alliance look like? Human leadership with Zephyrian advice, Ambassador Wright explained. We would make the major decisions, but we would consult with your people on all important matters. Your colonies would be rebuilt using human technology, but they would remain under Zephyrian control. And if we refuse? Zraken asked. Captain. Johnson answered honestly. Then you continue as you are. We won't attack you or force you to join us. But we won't help you either. And eventually the other young species will finish what they've started. How long do we have? Elder Vethmara asked quietly. Based on our projections, your empire will collapse completely within the next 1,000 years, Dr. Lee said. Possibly. Sooner, if the resource shortages get worse. The old Zephyrian closed his eyes. I remember when we first visited your world. Your people were so primitive, so helpless. We thought you would never amount to anything. You were wrong, Dr. Lee said, but her voice was kind. But being wrong isn't a failure. It's an opportunity to learn something new. What guarantee do we have that you won't simply absorb us completely? Admiral Kethver asked. How do we know we won't just disappear into your empire? Because we need you to remain Zephyrian, Ambassador Wright replied. We're not trying to create a galaxy full of humans. We're trying to create a galaxy full of different species working together. Your people bring something unique to that. Partnership. What do we bring? Zraken asked. Stability, Captain Johnson said. Patience, the wisdom that comes from age and experience. We humans are good at innovating and adapting, but we're not always good at thinking about long-term consequences. Your people could help us avoid making mistakes that we might not see coming. Elder Vethmara opened his eyes and looked around at his fellow Zephyrians. We need to discuss this among ourselves. Of course, Ambassador Wright said. Take all the time you need. But remember, every day you wait is another day your people suffer. How many other species have you made this offer to? Admiral Kethver asked. You're the first, Dr. Lee replied. We wanted to start with the species that taught us the most. As the Zephyrian delegation prepared to leave for their private discussions, Elder Vethmara turned back to the humans. If we agree to this alliance, what happens to our pride? Our sense of who we are? You become something better, Ambassador Wright said. You become a species that chose to grow instead of dying. That's something to be proud of. The old Zephyrian nodded slowly. Perhaps we will give you our answer soon. As the aliens left the room, Dr. Lee turned to her human colleagues. Do you think they'll accept? They have to, Captain Johnson replied. The alternative is extinction, and if they don't? Ambassador Wright asked. Dr. Lee looked at the holographic display showing the shrinking red lights of Zephyrian territory. Then we'll have to find other teachers. The galaxy is full of species that have something to offer. But she hoped it wouldn't come to that. The humans owed the Zephyrians a debt, and they preferred to pay their debts rather than write them off. 5 years had passed since the Zephyrians first returned to Earth. Fleet. Admiral Grace Collins stood on the observation deck of the massive space station orbiting the Zephyrian homeworld, watching the construction of new cities on the planet. Below, the sight still amazed her. Where once there had been dying settlements and abandoned colonies, now there were thriving communities filled with hope and purpose. The population growth rate is up 30% this year, Dr. Nathan Price reported as he joined her at the viewing window. As head of the Human-Zephyrian Cooperation Program, he had spent the last 5 years working closely with both species to make the alliance successful. "That's excellent news," Admiral Collins replied. "How are our Zephyrian partners adjusting to the new technologies?" "Better than expected," Dr. Price said with a smile. "Prime Minister Kethver has been particularly helpful. He's become quite skilled at explaining human concepts to his people in ways they can understand." Admiral Collins nodded. The former Admiral Kethver had surprised everyone by accepting the alliance quickly and throwing himself into making it work. He had been elected as the first Prime Minister of the reformed Zephyrian government, and his leadership had been crucial in helping his people adapt to their new circumstances. "Any problems with the integration process?" she asked. "Some resistance from the older generation," Dr. Price admitted. "But the younger Zephyrians are embracing the changes enthusiastically. They're excited about the opportunities the Alliance provides." Through the window, they could see Zephyrian and human workers collaborating on a massive terraforming project. The two species work together easily now, their differences in size and appearance no longer seeming strange or threatening. "Admiral Collins," a voice called from behind them. They turned to see Director Maya Rodriguez approaching. At 35, she was young for such an important position, but she had inherited her mother's diplomatic skills and had proven herself capable of handling the complex negotiations involved in expanding the alliance. "Director Rodriguez," Admiral Collins greeted her. "How did the meeting with the Altarian delegation go?" "Very well," Maya replied with satisfaction. "They're interested in joining the alliance. They've seen what we've accomplished with the Zephyrians and want to be part of it." Dr. Price looked pleased. "That would make them the 7th species to join us. The alliance is growing faster than we expected." "It's growing because it works," Maya explained. "The other species can see that we're not trying to conquer or absorb them. We're genuinely interested in cooperation and mutual benefit." "Admiral." Collins walked over to a large holographic display that showed the current state of their region of the galaxy. Blue lights marked human territory, green lights showed Zephyrian worlds, and other colors represented the various species that had joined the alliance over the past 5 years. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the display. 5 years ago, the Zephyrians controlled maybe 50 systems and were losing more every year. Now they have over 200 systems and are expanding into new territories. The joint colonization program has been incredibly successful, Dr. Price added. Combining human technology with Zephyrian experience has allowed us to terraform worlds in record time. Maya approached the display and highlighted a section near the galactic core. "The Altarians have offered to guide us to some of the older civilizations in that region. They think we might be able to help species that are facing similar problems to what the Zephyrians experienced. Declining birth rates, resource depletion, technological stagnation," Admiral Collins listed. "It seems to be a common pattern among older species, which is why our alliance model is so effective," Dr. Price said. "We bring new energy and ideas, while they bring wisdom and experience. It's a perfect combination." The door to the observation deck opened and Prime Minister Kethver entered, accompanied by several human and Zephyrian officials. The former admiral looked healthier and more confident than he had 5 years ago. The alliance had been good for him personally as well as for his people. "Admiral Collins, Director Rodriguez," he greeted them in accented but fluent English. "I wanted to update you on the deep space exploration project. How are the joint crews working out?" Maya asked. "Excellently," Kethver replied with enthusiasm. "The combination of human curiosity and Zephyrian caution has proven very effective for exploration missions. We're discovering new worlds and new species at an unprecedented rate." "Any interesting discoveries?" Admiral Collins asked. "Several," Kethver said, activating a personal display device. "We've found 3 more species that are interested in joining the alliance, and we've discovered some fascinating ruins that appear to be from a very ancient civilization." Dr. Price leaned forward with interest. How ancient? Possibly millions of years old, Kethver replied. The archaeological team thinks they might predate even our oldest records. That could be significant, Maya said thoughtfully. If there were advanced civilizations that long ago we might be able to learn from their experiences, Admiral Collins nodded. Add it to the research priority list. We need to understand what happened to the older civilizations if we want to avoid making the same mistakes. As they discussed the implications of the discovery, more people began arriving on the observation deck. Human and Zephyrian scientists, military officers, and diplomats gathered for the weekly Alliance coordination meeting. The easy interaction between the two species had become routine, but it still impressed visitors from other worlds. Admiral, one of the human officers reported, we have a communication from the Terran Council. They're asking about the timeline for the Galactic Core expedition. Admiral Collins looked at the assembled group. Prime Minister Kethver, how soon can we have a joint fleet ready for deep space exploration? 6 months, Kethver replied confidently. We have the ships, the crews, and the supplies. The main question is whether we want to go with a small exploration force or a full colonization fleet. Let's start with exploration, Maya suggested. Once we know what we're dealing with, we can plan the next phase. Agreed, Admiral Collins said. Dr. Price, please coordinate with the Zephyrian Science Council to select the research teams. I want our best people on this mission. As the meeting continued, Admiral Collins found herself thinking about how much had changed since that first day when the Zephyrian fleet had appeared at the edge of the solar system. The aliens had come expecting to find primitive humans ready to serve them. Instead, they had found a species ready to lead them into a new era of cooperation and growth. The alliance had been good for both species. The Zephyrians had regained their sense of purpose and were thriving under human leadership. The humans had gained access to the wisdom and experience of an ancient civilization, helping them avoid the mistakes that had led to the decline of so many other species. But more than that, they had created something new, not a human empire or a Zephyrian revival, but a genuine partnership between different species working toward common goals. Other species were taking notice, and the alliance was growing rapidly. Admiral, Maya said, interrupting her thoughts, there's one more thing we need to discuss. The Galactic Council has requested a meeting with our leadership. Admiral Collins raised an eyebrow. The Galactic Council? They've never shown interest in our region before. They have now, Maya replied. Apparently, our rapid expansion and the success of our alliance model has caught their attention. They want to know if we're planning to challenge their authority, Prime Minister Kethver chuckled. 5 years ago, my people were a dying empire. Now we're part of an alliance that the Galactic Council sees as a potential threat. It's remarkable how quickly things can change. What do you recommend? Admiral Collins asked. We meet with them, Maya said. We explain our goals and show them that we're not interested in conquest. We're interested in cooperation and mutual benefit. And if they don't believe us? Dr. Price asked. Admiral Collins looked out at the thriving world below, where two species that had once been master and subject now work together as equals. Then we show them what we've accomplished. Actions speak louder than words. As the meeting began to wind down, Admiral Collins felt a sense of satisfaction. The alliance had exceeded all expectations. The Zephyrians had found new life and purpose. The humans had gained valuable partners, and together they were building something that neither species could have achieved alone. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but they were no longer facing those challenges alone. They had proven that different species could work together successfully, and that cooperation was stronger than domination. The future looked bright, and Admiral Collins was eager to see what they would accomplish. Next,